welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. For today's video, I'm going to be reading some of my subscribers' scary stories. So if you're interested, grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. So starting off with story number 1, My Azulitas Rancho. Hi there, Daisy. Growing up, I used to live in El Paso, Texas. Both my parents had full-time jobs, and it was always tough trying to find someone to watch me. My abuela would visit and stay from time to time, and she would watch me when my parents would work. So that was always helpful, but as I got older, it got harder for my parents with school and summer break. So my grandma offered to take me over during summer breaks at her ranch in Juarez, which was only an hour away. I didn't mind at first because she had a pond in her backyard and most of my cousins lived around there, so I always had someone to play with. At my grandma's house, she had my tia Betty and her 2 older sons. My older cousins were in their late 20s, early 30s, so they had jobs and usually were never home. She also had a friend that stayed on the property as well. She lived in a small, almost shed-like house next to the main building. Since I was only 6 at the time, my grandma had me sleep in her room on a small cot that was close to the door. The way the house was set up was in the front was the kitchen and the dining room, and then a long hallway that led to 3 bedrooms. The first room being my grandma's, the second room was my tia's, and the last room was the boys'. If you exited the hallway at the far end where the boys' room was at, you entered the sala, the living room. My grandma did have an outhouse for the borrachos, as my tia Betty would say, and that was near the barn in the back closet to the pond. Now, summer in Mexico is no joke. There were maybe 2 fans in the house and really not much to do. Yes. In the summer, sleeping with no fan, no AC, be a struggle. So that's why I go in December. Not me. Usually we slept during the day and hung out towards the evening. Since everyone was up at night, it sort of made the nighttime feel more safe. As a kid, I was afraid of the dark, but when everyone was up, I felt safe. Now that I set things up for everyone, I can't recall when I noticed things, but I remember my first year, I didn't recall much paranormal type stuff happening. I remember my grandma would tell us scary stories about the brujas in the area and how they cursed the men. She would tell me about El Diablo and how you would hear him if you were up too late. It did scare me, but nothing ever happened the first night I stayed with her. However, the second summer, I did. I remember it was around the first week back at the ranch, and I was still getting used to my family's time schedule. I think I woke up around 5 in the morning and I had to go pee. As I got up to make my way to the restroom, I heard slow but heavy footsteps make their way down the hallway. At first, I thought it was my primo Jorge that had just got home from a late night out. So I raced to open the door to see if it was, and the moment I opened the door, the footsteps stopped. I would say I was confused, but I just thought maybe he already made it into his room. The only thing was that I didn't hear the door open or close. I brushed it off and went to the restroom and went back into bed. That week, as I was adjusting, I kept waking up around 5 or 6, and I would hear these footsteps slow and heavy. They would walk down the hallway, and sometimes I would hear it go to the back door. The strange thing was, I never heard when they started, only when they would walk by the room and when they stopped. I figured it had to be my cousins since they would wear boots or heavy shoes. One night, while we were all outside, I asked my tia when the boys would get home and if she heard them. She told me they usually come home around midnight because they had work. She asked why, and I told her that I had heard someone walking down the hallway in the morning. She took a long pause and she said she heard those footsteps before, but she didn't know either. My grandma chimed in and said that there was a man that used to tend to this ranch before my grandma bought it, and he was found dead in the barn one day, and that it was probably him. I sort of got scared after that, but my grandma and tia said that it has never hurt them, so why would he hurt me? We sort of left it at that. That night, we had moved on to other scary stories, which didn't make me feel any better. As the summer went along, I didn't wake up at those times and didn't hear it again. Summers went by and nothing crazy happened until my abuela's friend passed away. After her passing, things started to happen a lot. My abuela said it was because she threw away all of her stuff after she passed, and that made her upset. Occasionally, I would hear a door being shut on its own or the lights would go off and on, but my family didn't pay much attention to it. I think they found it more amusing. They would sometimes make a joke like, "Oh, do that again," or "There goes Rosa again," and just laugh it off. After her passing, my cousin and his girlfriend moved into Rosa's small room. They said it smelled like a pedo, aka a fart, most of the time, and the lights would turn off all the time, and they would hear someone talking outside of their window, and when they would check, no one was there. Since Rosa's room was pretty close to my grandma's, I occasionally heard it from time to time, but I always thought it was my cousin talking. I think things got worse right before my tia had her friend bless the house. At this time, I was back home with my parents, and my grandma had called my dad and told him that she was pushed while she was cooking that night, and it left a hand mark on her back. The only other people that were in the house was my cousin, who was taking a shower. Everyone else was outside. As she told my aunt, the lights went out and she heard the front door slam. All of the family that was there were waiting in the patio area to see if anyone would come out, but nothing ever did. My cousin had gone in to do a quick check and said no one was in the house, and the front door had been shut and locked. After they blessed the ranch, nothing else happened. But my ghost stories don't end there. When I moved to LA, things just got worse, and I have way more scary stories from there. Again, I love your videos. I love hearing you as I get ready in the morning. Besos, Reina. Oh, you are so cute. First of all, thank you for writing. Oh, Mateo. Don't forget, I have to say Mateo. Thank you so much, Mateo. It really means a lot that you are watching my videos and then you're writing in. You guys really melt my heart. I appreciate you guys so much. And of course, you already know what I'm about to say. Yes, send in those LA stories. I would love to know, especially because, you know, I've already had some, well, my family has had some encounters from LA, so I would love to know what you experienced. But thank you so much, Mateo, and hopefully your grandma's house remains like that. Nothing ever happens, continues to happen, because your poor grandmother being pushed, like, that's messed up. Like, whatever was there seems to be not a good spirit or a good entity. But thank you so much, Mateo. Big hugs. Now moving on to the next story. I was just 15 years old and was hanging out with some friends during midsummer night around 6:30 p.m. You know how boys are at 15. They have this thing about proving how brave they are. Well, my name is Carl, but my nickname was Champ. The guys' names was Tim, Butch, and Gracie. Gracie, he was known to us as Preach. We were always close since we were kids, and did almost everything together. Now, to begin with the story of that summer night. We had planned that before our parents would call for us to come home for the night, we would go up the train tracks to jump on the open doors because they were not moving for the rest of the night. So one by one, we hopped into an open door that we found that was unlocked. We were hoping to find some fireworks because the next day was 4th of July. We looked through some of the old crates that were left on the boxcar of the train. We felt lucky because we had found 2 large boxes with a few fireworks that were left behind. On the train tracks were 4 tracks with other trains on them that were not moving. We got what we could carry and stuffed them into our coat pockets. Then as we crossed the tracks, heading for home, Butch had seen a lady crossing the tracks about what looked like 45 feet from where we were. Then suddenly Butch with his fresh self decided to whistle at her. We said, "Man, what are you doing?" Because the only thing in our minds was making it home before it was too late. He said in a hushed tone, "Wait a minute, I just want to say hi to her." She just kept walking across the tracks from where she was. We told Butch, "Forget it, man, let's just go." He didn't hear our warning and continued to walk, following the lady. We knew we couldn't just let him walk alone, so as we continued, while he was still trying to get her attention, we followed her what seemed like almost about 5 city blocks from the tracks, till suddenly she stopped and slightly looked back, then continued to walk. It seemed as though she would always be about 30 feet ahead of us. Then, as we got closer up to her, we could closely see that she was wearing a shawl that was all white and very thin. When she suddenly stopped once again, this time she looked to her left and there was an open fence to a graveyard, and the other side you could barely see some old houses in a row, and a trail that seemed to curve from one end of the graveyard to reach them. We stood there looking at each other with the same idea. I'm not that desperate to meet her, to walk in there. She would just stand there as if she was waiting for us to walk in there behind her. But of course, Butch was willing to meet her like a starving puppy dog. Rest of us said to each other, hell no, not me, not me, not me. But of course, Butch just started walking right behind her. At this point, she reached out her hand as if she wanted him to follow her. I had a bad feeling about this. She took him by the hand and again started walking, almost reaching the middle of the graveyard. She turned around and looked at him. Butch started screaming, "Help me, help me!" We started to run towards him, and when we got there, we had saw her rise up like 20 feet off the ground in thin air, looking down at all of us. We had all started screaming, "Help!" in such fear. We started to run again, and then we knew what we had stumbled upon. She had led us to her grave and didn't want us to leave. By the grace of God, we were lucky to escape, and ever since then, we never told anyone of that terrible night till now. This is where I wish to end this story because it was true. I don't want to remember it. It was the year 1972. Well, I am sure Butch learned his lesson real fast because that all seemed traumatic for everyone. So thank you for writing it in. I'm sure it took a lot of courage to remember all of that. So thank you so much. If you have any more stories, please feel free to send them in. Now on to the next story. Hi Daisy. So to start off, I'm from Tamaulipas and so is my family. I spent most of my childhood at my grandma's home in Reynosa, Tamaulipas. My family has had several scary encounters before, but this is the one that truly terrified me. I used to spend most of my time at my grandma's when I was younger since my mom worked. My grandpa usually entertained me by telling me about his scary encounters and legends he believed in. Being a kid, I used to be afraid of all of them, but there was one encounter that he told me about that honestly still gives me the chills to this day. So, the story begins when my grandpa was in his late 20s. He used to work in a small rancho in Camargo with some of his old friends. As part of his job, he was often sent with two of his friends to pick up trash from the cattle and burn it afterwards. During one of these days, they were all sent to pick up the trash in a different place than they were used to. He said the amount was unbelievable that it would even cover up their feet as they walked among the trash. He mentioned how hot it was, more than it had ever been on any other particular day. It was around 3 or 4 in the tarde, in the afternoon. My grandpa said how dirty his clothes got since they all had a very long day after picking up the trash. As they were about to take a break, they noticed a young man walking towards them. He said this man was very elegant, que nunca había visto a alguien vestido con tanta elegancia. The man was wearing a suit. He said he looked straight up like the Catherine from the Loteria. The man was a bit far from where they were, but they could see him walking towards them. The man was walking very slowly with such elegance, holding a baston, a cane. The only thing they couldn't see was his feet, since they were covered by all the trash. As the man began to get closer, my grandpa and his friends started to pay more attention to him. Even one of them called out to him if he was lost or if he needed help, but they got no answer. The man just continued to walk towards them, coming closer and closer. As he got closer, they were able to see his facial features. My grandpa said he had a barba de candado, a padlock beard, and looked very wealthy. My grandpa and his friends looked at each other in a weird way, since they thought it was strange that the man didn't even bother to look at them or to acknowledge them. At some point, he got super close, and they were able to see his full figure. What my grandpa told me next gave me the chills and still does to this day. My grandpa said that he was a few steps away from them. As they looked at him from head to toe, what they saw shocked him. The man's feet were now visible from the trash. The man had a pata de cabra, and a pata de gallo. After they saw all that, suddenly everything went pitch black and none of his friends that were working with him remembered what happened. When they all woke up, there was people around trying to help them and the man was gone. Till this day, my grandpa said no one knows where the man came from or who he was, and he hopes it was not who he thinks that was. He said that this experience truly haunted him. This is a picture of what he described that the man looked like. I'll leave it here on the screen for you guys to see. You guys, what the heck? These stories are so common in Mexico, I swear. I have family members that have had encounters like this. So 100% this is authentic. I already know it. Not saying that the other ones weren't, but I know these stories are so frequent. People frequently have these encounters, and people believe it to be the devil himself. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that he experienced the devil? And hopefully not, like he said. Hopefully it wasn't who he thought, who he thinks it was. Yeah, that. But please send more stories if you have any more stories. If it's your grandma's, grandpa's stories, your mom, dad's, let me know. I would love to hear them. So thank you so much for sharing your grandpa's experience with us. So that was it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed next week's video. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so excited to share this video with you guys. I wanted to give you guys a little Halloween treat. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys haven't already. And I'll see you guys next week.